The Unabomber suspect held without bail. The FBI says a partially completed pipe bomb was found in his home. The Americans who died in Croatia. The question remains, why was their Air Force jet off course? And the dilemma facing America's Jews, our American agenda.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. In Montana today, the government has formally charged the man they believe is the Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski, the former mathematics professor who's lived a reclusive life in the Montana woods for 2 decades, is being held on a relatively minor weapons charge. But it is enough to keep him in jail while the FBI makes its case that he is the man who has caused such terror in the last 18 years. In order to keep him in custody, prosecutors had to disclose today some of what they discovered when they raided his tiny cabin yesterday in Montana. ABC's Tom Foreman.
The man who lived a hermit's life in the mountains was surrounded by people today as he was brought out from the Helena jail and into federal court. In court, the FBI produced a statement of items found in their search of Kaczynski's tiny 12 by 10-foot cabin, including what appears to be a partially completed pipe bomb, binders containing meticulous writings and sketches of explosive devices, metal pipes and chemicals, batteries and wire, and diagrams for boxes which could be used to conceal and transport bombs. The judge asked Kaczynski if he needed time to study the charges. He said, "I don't need more time." The judge said, "I assume you are unable to afford your own attorney." Kaczynski said, "Quite correct." A public defender was appointed. Kaczynski is not yet charged with any of the Unabomber's attacks. Prosecutors are apparently taking a careful and slow approach.
What I think is very important is that the investigation is continuing. Agencies have been working together. They have done an excellent job, but we have much to do yet.
In the quiet mountain town of Lincoln, where Kaczynski lived, the search of his home continues. The FBI is now trying to determine if 2 manual typewriters found there produced the Unabomber's manifestos. And today, local businesswoman Karen Potter recalled a time when Kaczynski returned from an extended trip.
I asked him, where have you been?
What did he say?
Why do you want to know?
It is still unclear how Kaczynski made a living or how he would have traveled around to plant or mail bombs. He had no car and only occasionally paid someone for a ride into Helena. But the case against him is growing. Asked if he wanted a preliminary hearing to hear more evidence, Kaczynski's attorney said, "We'd like some time to think about that." The judge said, "I think that is a good choice." Tom Foreman, ABC News, Helena, Montana.
Federal prosecutors have made it clear they're proceeding very slowly and very carefully against Mr. Kaczynski because they feel that time is on their side and they don't want to make any mistakes. Our chief investigative reporter Brian Ross tonight on how the case turned so dramatically.
The phone call that led to the arrest of Kaczynski came into the FBI office here in San Francisco around the first of the year.
There were just tens of thousands of phone calls that came into the 800 number.
Rick Smith, an FBI supervisor until his retirement last week, says the tip about a man named Kaczynski living in a remote area of Montana at first seemed no more promising than thousands of other phoned-in tips.
When it first came in, was it a high priority? Did it look perfect?
Yeah, my information is that wasn't the case.
The phone call came from a lawyer representing this man, David Kaczynski, the suspect's brother, seen here in a recent TV news profile about the homeless shelter he runs in Schenectady, New York. As David Kaczynski and his mother had prepared to sell the family home in the Chicago suburb of Lombard, they discovered some early writings from his brother that seemed to match the Unabomber's published manifesto. There had been other promising tips about people whose writings closely matched that of the Unabombers, but the agent who took the Kaczynski call pushed ahead, despite skepticism from other agents who believed the Unabomber had to be someone who lived in Northern California. But the lead soon started to fall into place, putting Kaczynski in the right place at the right time. FBI agents claiming they were doing a background check on Kaczynski for a White House job went door to door in his former neighborhood in Berkeley, California, where he had been a university mathematics professor in the 1960s.
He told me Bill Clinton was going to give him a promotion, something like that.
In Utah, where one bomb was mailed and another exploded, agents went through the rosters of homeless shelters where Kaczynski is believed to have stayed in the mid-1980s. And last Friday, agents even showed a picture of Kaczynski to a professor whose name was on one of the Unabomber's mailings.
I was asked to see if I recognized him. I didn't. I recognize one of them now as being the one that's in custody.
Back in Chicago, agents last week conducted a second search at a shed in the Kaczynski backyard, telling neighbors they were investigating whether some local kids had been making pipe bombs. And then finally in Montana, a special tactics branch of the FBI's hostage rescue team, trained in winter survival techniques, spent 8 weeks in the mountains surrounding the Kaczynski cabin in order to keep him under a 24-hour surveillance. Late today, authorities told ABC News that tools, typewriters, and other items seized in yesterday's raid have already been flown to the FBI crime lab in Washington, where tonight agents are beginning the crucial step of proving with hard evidence that the man known as the Hermit of Lincoln, Montana, is in fact the Unabomber. Brian Ross, ABC News, San Francisco.
One of the questions that can be answered now is how close the FBI profile actually was of the Unabomber suspect. The artist's sketch, 3 years old, based on an early eyewitness description, is fairly close. As for his age, the FBI estimated the Unabomber to be in his 30s or 40s. Kaczynski is actually 53. The profile fits on growing up in the Chicago area, but not on his education. The profile said some college or trade school. Kaczynski is much better educated with a bachelor's degree from Harvard and a doctorate from Michigan. On 2 personality traits, the profile seems right on. It says the Unabomber is probably lacking in social skills and is an obsessive-compulsive. A former classmate calls Kaczynski a loner and methodical to a fault. Well, we've had our first look at the crash site in Croatia, where nearly 36 lives were lost. In a moment, we'll get to that, why it took so long to reach the wreckage. At the Freeman of Montana Ranch, you're looking at a mystery meeting. And on this second night of Passover, American Jews and their heritage.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Pontiac.